Don't know. Judy's a damn good fellow, though. I wish to goodness he was on the mongoose with us." The lieutenant of the mongoose dropped into a chair and read the mail papers for an hour. Then he saw By Jove Judson in the street and shouted to him. Judson's eyes were very bright, his figure was held very straight, and he moved joyously. Except for the lieutenant of the mongoose, the club was empty. Judy, there will be a beautiful row," said the young man when he had heard the news delivered in an undertone. "You'll probably have to fight, and yet I can't see what the old man's thinking of to—" "My orders are not to row under any circumstances," said Judson. "Go look-see, that's all. When do you go?" "Tonight, if I can. I must go down and see about the thing. I say, I may want a few men for the day." "Anything on the mongoose is at your service. There's my gig come over now. I know that coast, dead, drunk, or asleep, and you'll need all the knowledge you can get. If it had only been us two together. Come along with me." For 1 whole hour Judson remained closeted in the stern cabin of the mongoose, listening, poring over chart upon chart and taking notes, and for an hour the marine at the door heard nothing but things like these. "Now you'll have to lie in here if there's any sea on. That current is ridiculously underestimated, and it sets west at this season of the year, remember. Their boats never come south of this, see? So it's no good looking out for them." And so on and so forth, while Judson lay at length on the locker by the 3-pounder and smoked and absorbed it all. Next morning there was no flat iron in Simon's Bay, only a little smudge of smoke off Cape Hancliffe, to show that Mr. Davies, the second-class engine-room artificer, was giving her all she could carry. At Admiral's house, the ancient and retired boatswain, who had seen many admirals come and go, brought out his paint and brushes, and gave a new coat of pure raw pea green to the 2 big cannons balls that stood one on each side of the Admiral's entrance gate. He felt dimly that great events were stirring. And the flat iron, constructed, as it had been before said, solely for the defence of rivers, met the great roll off the Cape of Agulhas, and was swept from end to end, and sat upon her twin screws, and leapt as gracefully as a cow in a bog from one sea to another, till Mr. Davies began to fear for the safety of his engines, and the crew boys that had made the majority of the crew were deathly sick. She ran along a very badly lighted coast, past bays that were no bays, where ugly flat-top rocks almost level with the water, and very many extraordinary things happened that have nothing to do with the story, but they were all duly logged by Jove Judson. At last the coast changed and grew green and low and exceedingly muddy, and there were broad rivers whose bars were little islands, standing 3 or 4 miles out to sea at sea, and By Jove Judson hugged the shore more closely than ever, remembering what the lieutenant of the mongoose had told him. Then he found a river full of the smell of fever and mud, with green stuff growing far into its waters, and a current that made the flat iron gasp and grunt. "We will turn up here," said By Jove Judson, and they turned up accordingly, Mr. Davies wondering what in the world all it meant, and the crew boys grinning merrily. By Jove Judson went forward to the bows and meditated, staring through the muddy waters. After 2 hours of rooting through this desolation at an average rate of 5 miles an hour, his eyes were cheered by the sight of one white buoy in the coffee-hued midstream. The flat iron crept up to it cautiously, and a leadsman took soundings all round it from a dinghy, while By Jove Judson smoked and thought, with his head on one side. "About 7 feet, isn't there?" said he. "That must be a tail end of the shoal. There's 4 fathoms in the fairway. Knock that buoy down with axes. I don't think it's picturesque, somehow." The crewmen hacked the wooden sides to pieces in 3 minutes, and the mooring chain sank with the last splinters of wood. By Jove Judson laid the flat iron carefully over the sight, while Mr. Davies watched, biting his nails nervously. "Can you back her against this current?" said By Jove Judson. Mr. Davies could, inch by inch, but only inch by inch, and by Jove Judson stood in the bows, gazed at various things on the banks as they came into line or opened up. The Flatiron dropped down over the tail of the shoal, exactly where the boy had been, and backed once more before by Jove Judson was satisfied. Then they were upstream for half an hour, put into shoal water by the bank, and waited, with the slip rope on the anchor. "Seems to me," said Mr. Davies deferentially, "like as if I've heard someone firing off at intervals, so to say." There was, beyond a doubt, a dull mutter in the air. "Seems to me," said by Jove Judson, "as if I heard a screw. Stand by to slip her moorings." Another 10 minutes passed, and the beat of engines grew plainer. Then round the bend of the river came a remarkably prettily built, white-painted gunboat, with a blue and white flag bearing a red boss in the centre. "Unshackle abaft the windlass! Stream both boys! Easy astern! Let go all!" The slip rope flew out. The 2 boys bobbed in the water to mark where anchor and cable had been left, and the Flatiron waded out into the midstream, with the white ensign at her one-mast head. "Give her all you can. That thing has the legs of us," said Judson, "and down we go." "It's war, bloody war! He's going to fire," said Mr. Davies, looking up through the engine-room hatch. The white gunboat, without a word of explanation, fired 3 guns at the Flatiron, cutting the trees on the banks into green chips. By Jove Judson was at the wheel, and Mr. Davies and the current helped the boat to an almost respectable degree of speed. It was an exciting chase, but it did not last for more than 5 minutes. The white gunboat fired again, and Mr. Davies in his engine-room gave a wild shout. "What's the matter? Hit?" said by Jove Judson. "No, I've just seized on your ruse de guerre. Begging your pardon, sir." "Right-o. Just the half-fraction of a point more." The wheel turned under the steady hand as by Jove Judson watched his marks on the bank falling in line swiftly as troops anxious to aid. The Flatiron smelt the shoal water under her, checked for an instant, and then went on. "Now we're over. Come along, you thieves there," said Judson. The white gunboat, too, hurried even to fire, was storming in the wake of the Flatiron, steering as she steered. This was unfortunate, because the lighter craft was dead over the missing boy. "What do you do here?" shouted a voice from the bows. "I'm going on. Sit tight. You're arranged for." There was a crash and a clatter as the white gunboat's nose took the shoal, and the brown mud boiled up in oozy circles under her forefoot. Then the current caught her stern on the starboard side and drove her broadside onto the shoal, slowly and gracefully. There she heeled at an undignified angle, and her crew yelled aloud. "Neat! Oh, damn neat!" quoth Mr. Davies, dancing on the engine-room plates, while the crew stokers beamed. The Flatiron turned upstream again, and passed under the hove-up starboard side of the white gunboat, to be received with howls and imprecations in a strange tongue. The stranded boat, exposed even to her lower strakes, was as defenseless as a turtle on its back, without the advantage of the turtle plating, and the one big bluff gun in the bows of the Flatiron was unpleasantly near. But the captain was valiant and swore mightily. By Jove Judson took no sort of notice. His business was to go up the river. "We will come up in a flotilla of boats, and disgrace your vile tricks," said the captain, with a language that need not be published. Then said by Jove Judson, who was a linguist, "You stay-o where you are-o, or I'll leave you a hollow in your bottom that will make you muchos perfados." There was a great deal of mixed language in reply, but by Jove Judson was out of hearing in a few minutes, and Mr. Davies, himself a man of few words, confided to one of his subordinates that Lieutenant Judson was a most remarkable prompt officer in a way of putting it. For 2 hours the Flatiron pawed madly through the muddy water, and that which had been at first a mutter became a distinct rumble. "Was war declared?" said Mr. Davies, and by Jove Judson laughed. "Then, damn his eyes, he might have spoilt my pretty little engines. There's a war up there, though." The next bend brought them in full sight of a small but lively village, built round a whitewashed mud house of some pretensions. There were scores and scores of saddle-colored soldiery in dirty white uniforms, running to and fro, shouting round a man in a litter, and on a gentle slope that ran inland for 4 or 5 miles, something like a brisk battle was raging around a rude stockade. A smell of unburied carcasses floated through the air and vexed the sensitive nose of Mr. Davies, who spat over the side. "I want to get this gun on that house," said By Jove Johnson, indicating the superior dwelling over whose flat roof floated the blue and white flag. The little twin screws kicked up the water exactly as a hen kicks in the dust before she settles down to a bath. The little boat moved uneasily from left to right, backed and yawed again, went ahead, and at last the gray, blunt gun's nose was held as straight as a rifle barrel on the mark indicated. Then Mr. Davies allowed the whistle to speak, as is not allowed to speak in Her Majesty's service on account of waste and steam. The soldiery of the village gathered into knots and groups and bunches, and the firing up the hill ceased, and every one except the crew of the Flatiron yelled aloud. Something like an English cheer came downwind. "Our chaps in mischief for sure, probably," said Mr. Davies. "They must have declared war weeks ago, in a kind of way, it seems to me." "Hold her steady, you son of a soldier," shouted By Jove Johnson, as the muzzle fell off the White House. Something rang as loud as the ship's bell on the forward plates of the Flatiron. Something spluttered in the water, and another thing cut a groove in the deck planking just an inch in front of By Jove Johnson's left foot. The saddle-colored soldiery were firing as the mood took them, and the man in the litter waved a shining sword. The muzzle of the big gun kicked down a fraction as it had laid on the mud wall at the bottom of the house garden. 10 pounds of gunpowder, shut up in 100 pounds of metal, was in charge. 3 or 4 yards of mud wall jumped up a little, as a man jumps when he is caught in the small of the back with a kneecap, and then fell forward, spreading fan-wise in the fall. The soldiery fired no more that day, and Judson saw an old black woman climb to the flat roof of the house. She fumbled for a time with the flag halyards, then, finding that they were jammed, took off one of her garments, which happened to be Isabel-colored petticoat, and waved it impatiently. The man in the litter flourished a white handkerchief, and By Jove Judson grinned. "Now we'll give him one up the hill. Round with her, Mr. Davies. Curse the man who invented those floating gun platforms. When can I pitch in unnoticed without slaying one of those little devils?" The side of the slope was speckled with men returning in disorderly fashion from the river into the riverfront. Behind them marched a small but very compact body of men who had filed out of the stockade. These last dragged quick-firing guns with them. "By Jove! It's a regular army, I wonder whose," said By Jove Johnson, as he waited developments. The descending troops met and mixed with the troops in the village, and, with the litter in the center, crowded down to the river, till men with quick-firing guns came up behind them. Then they divided left and right, and detachment marched through. "Heave those damn things over," said the leader of the party, and, one after another, 10 little gatlings splashed into the muddy water. The Flatiron lay close to the bank. "When you're quite done," said By Jove Judson politely, "would you mind telling me what's the matter? I'm in charge here." "We're the pioneers of the General Development Company," said the leader. "These little bounders have been hammering us in Largo for 12 hours, and we're getting rid of their gatlings. Had to climb out and take them, but they've snaffed the local lock actions. Glad to see you. Anyone hurt? No one killed exactly, but we're very dry. Can you hold your men?" The man turned round and looked at his command with a grin. There were 70 of them, all dusty and unkempt. We shan't sack this ash-bin, if that's what you mean. We're mostly gentlemen here, though we don't look it. All right, send the head of this post, or fort, or village, whatever you call it, aboard, and make what arrangements you can for your men. We'll find some barracks accommodations somewhere. Hello, you're in the litter there. You go aboard the gun. You in the litter there. Go aboard the gunboat. The command wheeled round, pushed through the dislocated soldiery, and began to search through the village for spare huts. The little man in the litter came aboard, smiling nervously. He was in the fullest of full uniforms, with many yards of gold lace and dangling chain. Also he wore very large spurs, the nearest horse being not more than 400 miles away. "My children," he said, facing the silent soldiery, "lay aside your arms." Most of the men had dropped them already, and were sitting down to smoke. "Let nothing," he added in his own tongue, "tempt you to kill those who have sought your protection." "Now," said By Jove Judson, on whom the last remark was lost, "will you have the goodness to explain what the deuce you mean by all this nonsense?" "It was all of a necessitate," said the little man. "The operation of war are uncomfortable. I am the governor, and I operate, captain. Behold my little sword." "Confound your little sword, sir. I don't want it. You fired on our flag. You've been firing at our people here for a week, and I've been fired at coming up the river. Ah, the Guadalala. She have misconstrued you for a slaver, possibly. How are the Guadala? Mistook a ship of Her Majesty's Navy for a slaver? You mistake any craft for a slaver. By Jove, sir, I've a good mind to hang you at the yard arm." There was nothing nearer that terrible spar than the walking stick in the rack. There was nothing nearer that terrible spar than the walking stick in the rack of Judson's cabin. The governor looked at the one mast and smiled a depreciating smile. "The position is embarrassment," he said. "Captain, do you think that those illustrious traitors burned my capital? My people will never give them beer." "Never mind the traitors. I want an explanation." "Huh! There are popular uprisings in Europe, Captain. In my country." His eyes wandered aimlessly around the horizon. "What has that to do with—" "Captain, you are very young. This is very uproarious, but here he slapped his chest till his epaulets jingled. "I am loyalist to pits of all my stomachs." "Go on," said Judson, and his mouth quivered. "An order arrived to me to establish a customs house here, and to collect of the taxament of the traders when she are to come here necessarily. That on account of political misunderstandings with your country and mine. But to that arrangement there was no money also. No, not one damn little cowrie. I desire damnably to extend all commercial things. And why? I'm a loyalist, and there is rebellion. Yes, I tell you, republics in my country for to just begin. You do not believe? See some time how it exists. I cannot make of this customs house and pay the high paid officials. The people too in my countries, they say the king she have no regardance into honor of her nation. He throws away everything. Gladstone her all. You say, eh?" "Yes, that's what we say," said Judson with a grin. "Therefore they say, let us be republics on hot cakes. But I am a loyalist to my hands' ends. Captain, once I was attaché at Mexico. I say the republics are no good. The people have her stomach high. They desire, of course, for the bills."